February usually means platforms dump their leftover romantic comedies, but if you look past the algorithmic sludge on Hulu, there's a goldmine of atmospheric dread waiting for you. I'm talking about that slow burn, A24-style horror, movies that trade cheap jump scares for deeply unsettling psychological terror. I've sifted through the library for the United States region to bring you 10 intense cerebral nightmares that actually respect your intelligence and stay with you long after the credits roll. These are 10 heavy hitters available to stream right now. Let's get into it. Number 10. Jagged Mind, 2023. Starting off with a movie that completely flips the script on the standard time loop trope, we have Jagged Mind from 2023. Directed by Kelly Callie, this is a psychological thriller that uses supernatural elements to paint a terrifying picture of a toxic relationship. The story follows a woman named Billy, played brilliantly by Maisie Richardson, Sellers, who starts experiencing strange blackouts and realizes she is living the same days over and over again. Usually, time loops are treated like a puzzle to be solved, but here, it's a trap. Billy's new girlfriend, Alex, Shannon Woodward, is at the center of it all. As the loops repeat, you start noticing the subtle, manipulative changes in how Alex controls the environment. The movie does a fantastic job of making you feel as disoriented and paranoid as Billy is. It doesn't feed you the mechanics of the loop right away. It lets the dread build as reality literally starts breaking apart. It's a grounded, intimate horror story that hits incredibly close to home if you've ever felt trapped by someone who claims to love you. Now, moving from supernatural manipulation to a much more clinical, surgical kind of obsession, my next pick is a modern take on a classic monster story. Number 9. Rebirth, 2023. Rebirth is what happens when you take the DNA of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and drop it into a modern Bronx apartment. Directed by Laura Moss, this is a ferociously smart and deeply disturbing biological horror film. It centers on Rose, Marin Ireland, a brilliant but entirely unsocial morgue technician who prefers the company of cold cadavers to living people. She's been secretly developing a biological process to reanimate dead tissue. When a maternity nurse named Celie, Judy Reyes, tragically loses her 6-year-old daughter to sudden illness, the girl's body ends up on Rose's table, and Rose manages to bring her back. But this isn't a miraculous resurrection. The genius of this movie is in the grueling, horrifying sacrifices required to keep the little girl alive. The practical effects here are stomach-turning, not in a slasher way, but in a sterile medical way. You watch these two very different women form a twisted alliance, pushing the boundaries of morality and maternal madness to sustain this fragile, unnatural life. It's a slow burn that asks how far you would go to cheat death, and the answer is bleak. Speaking of dark, twisted maternal bonds and the horrors of returning home, let's head out to the desolate English countryside. Number 8. Matriarch, 2022. Matriarch is a heavy, suffocating piece of folk horror that feels like breathing in damp earth. It follows Laura, Jemima Rooper, a woman whose life is spiraling out of control due to a crippling addiction. After suffering a mysterious and severe illness, she gets a phone call from her estranged mother and decides to return to her isolated childhood village to recover. But this isn't a quaint little hometown. From the moment Laura arrives, something is fundamentally wrong with the locals, and especially with her mother, played by Kate Dickie, who you might recognize from The Witch, and who brings that same terrifying, zealous energy here. The movie digs deep into the concept of generational trauma, taking the phrase toxic family tree and making it horrifyingly literal. There is an ancient, evil presence tied to the village and Laura's bloodline, and the body horror that unfolds in the third act is genuinely repulsive. It's a wet, grimy, uncomfortable film that doesn't shy away from the ugliest parts of human nature. And keeping with the theme of discovering that your family tree is rotten to the core, let's jump to a sun-drenched nightmare set in Europe. Number 7. Amelia's Children, 2024. Amelia's Children, directed by Gabriel Abrantes, is a movie that initially lulls you into a false sense of security with its beautiful Portuguese locations before pulling the rug out from under you. It follows a man named Riley, Carloto Cotta, who after taking a DNA test, finally tracks down his biological family. He and his girlfriend travel to a remote, opulent estate to meet his long-lost mother, Amelia, and his twin brother. At first, it just feels like a weird, eccentric family reunion, but the cracks start to show very quickly. Amelia's obsession with youth and beauty hides a much darker, unnatural truth. The movie brilliantly uses the discomfort of trying to fit in with strangers to build tension. You know something is off about the way the mother and brother interact, but the script takes its time revealing the full extent of their depravity. It touches on themes of vanity and the horrifying lengths people will go to preserve their legacy, culminating in a violent, twisted finale that will make you glad you don't know your extended family. Changing gears entirely, let's move from ancient family curses to a much more immediate, physical threat lurking in a confined space. Number 6. Sting, 2024. If you have even a mild case of arachnophobia, you might want to watch Sting from Behind the Couch. Directed by Kiyoshi Turner, this is a masterclass in creature, feature tension. The setup is simple. A rebellious young girl in a rundown apartment building finds a strange little spider and secretly decides to keep it as a pet in a jar. But this isn't a normal spider. It grows at an impossible rate, and soon it's not satisfied with bugs anymore. What makes Sting work so incredibly well is the commitment to practical effects. In an era where most monsters are weightless pixels, the creature in this movie feels heavy, fast, and lethal. The director treats the apartment building like a locked puzzle box. As the spider gets larger, it begins using the air ducts and wall cavities to hunt the quirky residents of the building one by one. It's got that gritty, claustrophobic energy of Alien, but shrunk down to a crumbling residential block. The sound design alone, the clicking of legs behind the drywall, is enough to make your skin crawl. From a monstrous pet hidden in a bedroom, let's pivot to a monstrous family hiding in plain sight. Number 5. Flesh and Blood, 2018. Technically an installment of Hulu's Into the Dark anthology series, Flesh and Blood operates as a standalone feature, and it is a suffocating thriller directed by Patrick Lussier. The story revolves around a teenage girl named Kimberly, Diana Silvers, who suffers from severe agoraphobia after the unsolved murder of her mother. She hasn't left her house in a year, relying entirely on her seemingly perfect doting father, played by Dermot Mulroney. This is a masterclass in paranoia. As the movie progresses, Kimberly begins to suspect that her father is not the grieving, loving protector he pretends to be, but might actually be a serial killer. The tension comes from her total isolation. She can't physically leave the house without suffering a panic attack, so she is trapped in a cat and mouse game with the one person who controls her entire world. Mulroney is terrifying here, precisely because he plays the role with such calm, paternal warmth. The movie forces you to question whether Kimberly is losing her mind or if she is locked in a cage with a monster. From the isolated horrors of the suburbs, let's move to a film that tackles cultural isolation and literal demons. Number 4. It Lives Inside, 2023. It Lives Inside is a stunning debut from director Bishal Dutta that uses demonic horror as a metaphor for the struggles of cultural assimilation. The story follows Sam, Megan Suri, an Indian-American teenager who is desperately trying to fit in at her mostly white high school. She distances herself from her culture and her former best friend, Tamira, who has started acting erratically and carrying around a strange, sealed glass jar. When Sam accidentally breaks the jar, she unleashes a Pishak, a demonic entity from Hindu mythology that feeds on negative energy and isolation. The creature design in this film is fantastic. It doesn't just jump out of closets, it lurks in the shadows, slowly dismantling Sam's life and targeting the people she cares about. The movie perfectly balances the very real horrors of high school alienation with the supernatural terror of a monster you can't outrun. The sound design is heavy and oppressive, making the entity feel like a physical weight pressing down on the characters. Moving from spiritual possession, my next pick deals with a much more high-tech, violent form of taking over someone's soul. Number 3. Possessor, 2020. Possessor is directed by Brandon Cronenberg, and yes, the apple does not fall far from the tree. This is a brutal, unforgiving masterpiece of sci-fi horror. It follows Tasha Voss, Andrea Riseborough, an elite assassin who works for a secretive corporation. She doesn't use sniper rifles. She uses a brain implant technology to hijack the bodies of innocent people, using them to carry out high-profile hits before forcing the host to commit suicide so she can return to her own body. This movie is a sensory assault. When Voss takes over a man named Colin, Christopher Abbott, for her next job, things go wrong. Colin's consciousness fights back, trapping Voss inside his mind. What follows is a visually stunning, incredibly violent struggle for control over a single body. The practical effects in this movie are jaw-dropping. Cronenberg uses camera tricks, melting prosthetics, and lighting to visually represent the collapse of two identities smashing into each other. It is an ugly, cynical look at corporate control and the total loss of self. It's definitely the most graphic movie on this list, so consider that a warning. From the complete loss of identity in the city, let's head out to the total loss of sanity in the snow. Number 2. The Lodge, 2019. Directed by Veronica Franz and Severin Fiala, the duo behind Goodnight Mommy, The Lodge is an exercise in sheer, unrelenting dread. After a horrific family tragedy, two resentful children are forced to spend the holidays in a remote, snowed, cabin with their father's new, younger girlfriend, Grace, Riley Keough. To make matters worse, the father has to leave them alone for a few days for work. Grace has a dark past. She is the sole survivor of an extremist Christian suicide cult. As a massive blizzard traps them inside, the power goes out, their supplies vanish, and reality begins to warp. The kids don't trust Grace, and Grace slowly begins to lose her grip on her own sanity as the ghosts of her cult past resurface. Riley Keough gives a powerhouse performance of a woman trying desperately to hold on to the present while her mind drags her back into the dark. It's a beautifully shot, chilling movie that makes you feel the cold seeping through the screen. And closing out our list is another descent into religious madness that is widely considered one of the best horror debuts of the decade. Number 1. Saint Maud, 2019. Saint Maud, written and directed by Rose Glass, is a staggering piece of cinema. It stars Morfydd Clark as Maud, a deeply devout, incredibly lonely palliative care nurse who is assigned to look after Amanda, Jennifer Ela, a cynical, terminally ill, former dancer. Maud becomes convinced that God has sent her on a holy mission to save Amanda's soul before she dies. This isn't a movie about a ghost or a monster. It's a terrifying look at the internal mechanics of zealotry and trauma. The camera puts you squarely inside Maud's head. When she experiences the presence of God, it is shot with terrifying physical intensity. Sometimes it looks like ecstasy. Sometimes it looks like a seizure. The film constantly walks a razor-thin line, making you wonder if Maud is truly experiencing the divine or if she is suffering a severe psychological break. It builds slowly, meticulously stripping away Maud's grip on reality until it reaches a finale that is, without exaggeration, one of the most shocking and unforgettable final frames in modern horror history. It is an absolute must-watch. That's the list. 10 atmospheric, slow burn nightmares sitting on Hulu right now that don't rely on cheap tricks to get under your skin. They are ugly, beautiful, and absolutely ruthless. If you're exhausted by the endless scroll of mediocre content and want recommendations that actually challenge you, stick around. I'll keep digging through the streaming vaults to find the stuff worth your time. Drop a comment if you check any of these out. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you on the next one.